Hi guys, over here. I'm a bit tilted because I recorded the whole thing, and then I realized that I didn't hit record actually, so I speak to myself for a bit. So that's a bit idiotic for my part, but at least I got a bit of practice with this. So I'm going to be playing today Bant Ephemerate. This is a deck that was created and popularized by Bierman. It's a turbo fog deck actually, a value deck, a mid-range deck, and a control deck. It does a lot of things. So let's start by in parts, right? So the first part is our mana. We have instead of Berman plays actually two Evolving Ways instead of Thriving Grove. I prefer Thriving Lands over Evolving Ways if I can afford it, because we have a lot of high mana cost problems. So having Thriving Lands helps us with that. In testing the deck, I realized that the more Thriving Lands you have, the better your mana is in the late game, allowing you to go, for example, to maybe 2 Ephemerates on a turn or something like that, or 2 Coiling Oracles on a turn, which is kind of difficult. So that's the main struggle I've found with the deck, so I prefer Thriving Grove here. But you could have Evolving Wilds instead for making Ponder better. So that's mostly it. It's the only change I made to the mana base. I did a bit of analysis myself, and it was good. So yeah, for growth chambers, because we are a very mana hungry deck, and it's not like we don't have enough card advantage. It's not as a card advantage engine that we have this, but it's to have enough mana to our late game, because we have a lot of. We are a very mana hungry deck. So if we want to play like a Mock Drifter on turn 5, or maybe a Stonehorn and Flicker It or something like that, we need to have a lot of mana sources. So one of the extra mana sources we have are the four bounce manas. Besides that, we have 6 cantrips. In the past, Bierman used Brainstorm. I decided to go with Ponder, not only to remove a bit of the shuffles, but because we don't have enough shuffle effects to make it good. So most of the time you were like wanting, you wanted to go for Brainstorm to find lands, but it's not the way that Brainstorm works. So it doesn't help us with our mana situation. So adding Ponder makes that a bit more efficient and more works better. It's a bit worse with Coiling Oracle, but you can still kind of ponder into putting a land on top, so your Coiling Oracle hits for sure. Then we have the Coiling Oracle. If you don't know this card is awesome. So when it enters the battlefield, you reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land card, it goes into the battlefield, otherwise it goes into your hand. So this card, with in tandem with Ponder or Preordain, can set up so you are sure to hit a land and ramp. Otherwise, it draws a card, so it always does something good. So yeah, it's kind of ramp, but not really, so it's interesting. The important thing is that, for example, you could play, for example, I don't know, Explore, right? Explore also draws a card and maybe ramps. But Coiling Oracle is a flickerable body, so it's normal to just play this on turn 2, pass the turn, the opponent attacks or whatever, and then in the next turn you block with the Coiling Oracle and flicker it to generate value and gain a bit of life. Then we have a bit of anti-aggro suite in the form of 2 Moments Peace, a Weather the Storm, and 2 Stormhorn Dignitaries. It's important for us to have Fox because we don't have any removal. So the way that we face or that we have our anti-aggro suite, you could have another build, for example, that's Cheskai instead of Bant. But if you go that way, you need to have at least like around 8 and 10 removal spells. Here with only 5 anti-aggro cards, we are kind of fine, and I'm going to explain a bit later why. And that brings us the number of things that we can put in our deck to a higher amount, right? We can play like a lot of value cards because we have more space, because we don't have a lot of removal spells. Then we have only 2 counter spells. We are mostly a tap out deck, but we have a couple of instances. So counter spell isn't as great. For example, in a Jeskai deck, you have a lot of instant speed interactions, so counter spell goes up in value here. It's mostly to lock the opponent out. You can counterspell something on turn 2, then you have a counterspell in your yard to fetch with Ephemerate and on an Archaeomancer on a later turn, and just counter everything that your opponent does from there on after. Ghostly Flicker, it generates a lot of value, also can make a bit of a lock with Stonehorn and Archaeomancer, but it it just by itself mostly is like a draw 2 to 4 cards on 3 mana. Then we have Llanowar Visionary. This card can be also a Seed Oracle. I prefer this card because we have a lot of, as I said before, a lot of green mana requirements. So having a Llanowar Visionary that fixes your mana and ramps you is very good. Seed Oracle can dig a bit deeper for you to find your anti-aggro or something that you need right now. So that's another consideration, but I prefer this one because we have like Moment's Peace, Calling Oracle, Pulse of Murasa, Temporal Spring, more Llanowar Visionaries, a lot of green requirements on our early cards. So for me, it's very important to have it. Also, it can ramp you into a turn 4 Drifter, so that's very good too. Then we have Pulse of Murasa. This card is also an anti-aggro card, but it works very well with removal decks where they kill your Archaeomancer on side and you return it with Pulse of Murasa, play the Archaeomancer, return the Pulse of Murasa to your hand, and kind of do a graveyard recursion loop with just 2 cards. And it gains a lot of life, so it's good versus aggro too. And versus burn, we have already 3 cards that gain life on our main deck. Then we have Temporal Spring. This card looks a bit nonsensical, but it's very good. It's mostly like a Vindicate, that it can answer any permanent. Of course, it only puts it on the top of the opponent's library. So what's the idea here? The idea is that if we can record this every turn, then we have a loop where the opponent doesn't draw anything new. So if we can answer everything in their hand and board, then we win the game that way. Also, if we can do this 2 times a turn, then we are talking like removing one permanent from the battlefield each turn. Another important thing is that this can target ourselves, so we can really, if we play our cards correctly, we can never deck ourselves if we have the loop. Then we have these cards that are just a mainstay on any kind of Archaeomancer Drifter deck. So yeah, this is like the core of the deck. So the idea is to generate value in the early games, ramp a bit with our low drops, then generate a lot of value with Flicker and Ephemerates, and then on the late game lock the opponent out either by removing every attack step that they have, or just answer any permanent that they have on the board, or just answering everything on the opponent's on the stack, right? So we have answers to everything. We have a bit of 2 cards of each mostly, so we need to find our correct pieces for each matchup. Then in the sideboard we have more fogs in the form of Stonehold Dignitary. It's important versus aggro. The best thing you could be doing versus aggro is just casting a Stonehold Dignitary and then hold Ephemerate for the rest of the game. They can really win there. It gives you so much time. It's very difficult for you to lose that way. Last Breath is a weird removal spell that doesn't work against big creatures, but this is mostly against fairy decks where you can remove a spell starter on the stack, or a Ninja of the Deep Powers, or a Unflipped Delver. That's important, you can kill the Flipped Delver, so answer it before it flips. And it's important that we have an instant speed or sorcery card, removal spell, so we can record it with Archaeomancer. That's the trick. If you can record it a couple of times, then you're very far ahead. Importantly, it also gains life, so if we are in a pinch, we can remove one of our creatures to gain life. What else? This card also is very good against walls. I think all of their creatures have power 2 or less, except maybe Uramon's Crusher, so you can kill everything. And it exiles it, so it's better in that way. And it's instant speed, so you can respond to anything they do. Then we have this spell against matchups where the stack is more important than the board. Then we have Hydroblast against red decks, where you can counter the Pyroblast and removal spells. Counterspell and Exclude are good cards against Tron and other creature-based slow decks, like cards. Then we have Return to Nature, which is a card that can answer a lot of different things. It's mostly good against Wander's Ornament and Pestilence, but it can also answer something in the graveyard. For example, if the opponent go for a Pulse of Murasa, you can exile it, or if they go for an Archaeomancer on an Ephemerate, you can exile the Ephemerate and gain a bit of time. It's just good all around versus Tron, which is kind of weird. as it's just a glorified disenchant, but that's where we are now. Then we have Claws of Warrior, which is a bit strange. It's a 4-mana sorcery that basically kills every flyer in the format. The only flyer that it doesn't kill is a Spider Golem or a Muldrifter that has a couple of counters from a Key of Temptation. But the idea is that we can just wrath the board against Fairy decks or Boros Bully or something like that. Also, importantly, it hits each player, so you have to take that into account. If you're low on life, you can't cast this. And the other important thing is that this card can be a win condition if you gain life each turn and the record is you kind of do a bolt a turn to the opponent. It's a slow loop, but it's a win condition if you're already top locking them or something like that. Another thing is that it cycles, so if we have a lot of cards that are bad, for example, we want to remove a lot of cards and we don't have enough things to put in, we can just put a clause in the main deck so we can cycle it. It's not ideal, but it's a bit of an upside. So I think I went through everything. So I tried to remember to put a link to Birbant's Twitch. He's currently streaming a lot recently, so I really recommend you watch it if you can. So he's at least at this point in time, he's playing a lot of this deck. So if you like this deck, I really recommend you go and check it out. So another thing I might do is double check the sideboard if it matches what Berman's thinks is correct. I think we want one more fog on the sideboard. I'm not really sure, so I'm going to double check that. Then I'm going to run this deck through a league. This is the first league I run since forever, so wish me luck and let's see how it works.